Okay, this is for our Bio 2 class. This is our biodiversity project, and we chose to do a body length comparison of the Urositellus columbianus, which is the Colombian ground squirrel, in the states of Montana, Idaho, and Oregon. And my name is Elena.
I'm Macy. And I'm Aviana. So some objectives are we're going to understand characteristics and notable background facts about the species. We're going to read and understand statistical analysis of data described. We're going to understand length and specimen depending on the geographical location, possible limitations to the data collected, and ideas for future research based upon data collected in the presentation. So some introduction, phylum, which is the class of chordata. Some characteristics is the post-anal tail and the notochord. Class is mammalia, the mammary gland, which is to produce milk, hair, and fur. And then family, Squirrel, which they have a slender body and a long bushy tail. Continuing this, they are only active for about 4 months per year, and then they are in hibernation for 8 months. They inhabit in Oregon, Idaho, Montana, as well as parts of Canada. There is little research about Canadian inhabitants. They range from 340 to 812 grams. It is difficult due to fat storage for hibernation. The length ranges from 324 to 410. They have an average of 60 to 114 millimeters account for the tail alone. And then both female and male are considered fully mature by the age of 3. They are primarily herbivores, except for midsummer. The grasses, leafy vegetation, and bulbs primarily incorporate some fruit and seeds during the summer. Some major characteristics: they burrow in meadows, forests, and sagebrush hills. Largest ground squirrel species. They live in colonies, and males emerge from hibernation before females do. Predation, major food source for badgers, weasels, coyotes, foxes, and birds of prey. The badgers are the most consistent, and when danger is sensed, they produce a shrill chirp and they alert all the other squirrels. And even though there are lots of predators, they are highly successful. Compared to other relatives, Colombian ground squirrels are least of concern. The mating behavior. So males establish a territory, driving out all other males in April and May. Lower elevation inhabitants tend to breed in April. Higher elevations tend to breed as late as June. Female genitals swell and they secrete an odor to attract males. And then if females go unmated, they secrete the odor again after 2 weeks. And there's one litter per year, and the litter size typically is 2 to 4 young. So some damage that they cause: they tend to burrow near crop and pasture lands, feeding, burrowing, trampling on crops. They also burrow sites increase soil erosion rate, which then increases the weed growth. Mounds can damage crop harvesting machinery. Research purpose and gap in knowledge. Why are we conducting this research, and what do we want to know? To determine if Montana has the largest body length average for the Colombian ground squirrel when compared to states such as Idaho and Oregon. Why do we already know about the Colombian ground squirrels in Montana? Montana offers a vast amount of resources. The squirrels in Montana have a large energy intake, and there is no trouble foraging for food in Montana also.
Okay, so our hypothesis for this study was, if we are comparing the total length of the Colombian ground squirrel in millimeters in the states of Montana, Idaho, and Oregon, then we assume that Montana will have the largest body length out of the three. We say this because Montana offers vast farmlands for burrowing and an abundance of resources, and we expect these assets to correlate with a larger body length in the state. And our null hypothesis is, obviously, if there's no correlation between the largest body length in the state of Montana, then the habitat and their resources do not correlate to their body length in any way. So our experimental design, we used VertNet and we conducted a search for the Eurosatellis columbianus and filtered out for total body length. The search yielded 1,063 specimen results, and then we filtered those results based on the states for Montana, Idaho, and Oregon, and then those were used to conduct the study. So after filtering, the results were 302 from Montana, Oregon, and Idaho. And the average total length for each state, Montana was 309.02 millimeters, Idaho was 321.1 millimeters, Oregon was 315.11 millimeters. So Idaho had the largest total body length out of those three combined. And our experimental p-value was 0.3173, and this determined that the null hypothesis was accepted, meaning that there is no correlation between the resources in Montana and their total body length. And this is just a slide of our state surveyed, Montana, Idaho, and Oregon. So this is descriptive statistics for Montana. This gives some important information such as the mean, median, mode, standard deviation, the variance. So as you can see in here, the average length in this state of Montana was 309.02. And again, this is another descriptive statistics for Idaho. And as we can see, the mean length in Idaho was 321.1. And then again for Oregon, in this state, you can see that the mean was 315.11 millimeters. Next, another form of statistical data is a frequency histogram. This one is specifically is for Montana, and we can see that the total body lengths between 270 and 320 millimeters had the highest frequency for Montana. Again, for this one is for Idaho. For this state, we can see that the total body length between 290 and 340 millimeters had the highest frequency. And again, for Oregon, this one, the highest frequency was between 290 and 310 millimeters. Okay, this is the scatter plot for Montana. This is another source of data that we put into a graph. As you can see, for Montana, most values fall between 200 to 400 millimeters for the total body length, and there's very few outliers that fall below the 200 and 500 mark. This is another scatter plot for Idaho. As we can also see, most values for this data set fall between 250 and 400 millimeters, and there is one outlier that falls a little bit below 150 millimeters in length. This is the final scatter plot for Oregon. Same for the state, most of the total body length falls between 250 and 400 millimeters, and there's no outliers for this data plot. And then this is the final scatter plot. This kind of combines all of the data values for all three of the states. And as we can see, it's pretty consistent. Most of the values for the total body length falls between 200 to 400 millimeters in length, and there's very few outliers. This is a box plot. We can see the variance in this and how spread out the data is. And we can see the maximum for Montana was 554 and the minimum was 171. Again, this is the box plot for Idaho. We can see that the maximum was 375 and the minimum was 144. And then finally, the box plot for Oregon. We can see that the maximum total body length was 364 millimeters and the minimum was 276. And then this is our ANOVA results. This combines all three states. This is another source of statistical analysis and just some descriptive statistics. And our experimental p-value for this data set was around 0.3173. And we can see that that is not significant. That shows that we accept our null hypothesis because it is not below 0.05. So we can see from this data that there is no correlation between total body length and the resources that Montana has to offer.
Okay, so for our discussion, as we stated before, the main hypothesis was rejected and our null hypothesis was accepted. Idaho had the longest total body length average, and we only had a few outliers, about four, averaging in length for all three states was between 250 and 400. Their greatest variability was in Montana. Allen's rule states that the closer to the equator, the longer and thinner the appendages and longer bodies. Idaho is closest to the equator out of the three states, so it makes sense that that's why they had the longest average. Some limitations were the sample sizes. Oregon and Idaho had very small specimen sample sizes. This heavily affects the average length, and we could have had different results if we were given larger sample sizes for those two states. The total body length in each state could be due to other unrelated factors like nutrient intake, competition, and predator survival. For future studies, if Allen's rule is demonstrated in some animals, can the ideas be displayed in humans? Even if it's not by a lot, do humans further from the equator tend to have shorter appendages and rounder bodies? This is a health study, and the research would be considered personal because you have to measure all of the individual body parts. In conclusion, Montana does not have the longest total length of the Colombian ground squirrel. Its vast resources do not correlate with a longer body length. Idaho had the longest average for total body length of the Colombian ground squirrel. This aligns with Allen's rule because it is closest to the equator. And then these are our references, and thank you for watching.